There are certain habits that basically all wealthy people have in common that you guys can put to use in your life. And the first one is going to be the most controversial, but I could not feel more strongly about this. They make no excuses. They take total responsibility for their lives. In fact, many people that fall into that category will take responsibility for things that clearly don't even have anything to do with themselves. I have said many times, this is arguably the most controversial thing I've ever said, but I'm telling you, if you adopt this in your soul and act accordingly, it will change your life forever. You will become an unstoppable machine. If I, Tom Bilyeu, were hit by a drunk driver, I would blame myself. Not because I don't think that the drunk driver caused the accident, because blaming the drunk driver gives all my power away. And I can't do anything about them. I can't stop people from drinking. I can't control the way other people drive, but I can control whether or not I'm on the road. I can control how good I get at defensive driving, how much I pay attention and looking out, all of that. All of those things I control. So if you take control of your life and make no excuses, now you're in a solution-oriented mindset. And people that get wealthy, let me tell you right now, all they think about are solutions. How do I solve this problem? Because if you're wealthy, you must remember you're paid in direct proportion to the difficulty of the problems you solve. And if that's true, you better get very good at solving very difficult problems. And if you have something that's holding you back, like I'm not as smart as a lot of people, and that really pisses me off. But the reality is, pissing and moaning about it is not going to make me any smarter. All I can do is go make the most of what I have. I can go learn. Now, I could get pissed off at my mom. I could be angry at my dad. But the reality is that I am where I'm at from either how I was impacted as a kid in the developmental years, how I was impacted in the womb, my genetics, all of that stuff. But it's all done. The die is cast. There's nothing I can do about it. But there's 50% of my life that's completely malleable. And so I'm going to focus on that. And I'm going to, like other wealthy people, be obsessed with learning. You've got to be obsessed with learning. So you're not making any excuses. You take total responsibility for your life. And one of the ways you take responsibility for your life is even if circumstances are against you, even if you really have been dealt a bad hand, you know that you can get better at things. You have the only belief that matters. The only belief that matters is if I put energy and effort into getting better, I will actually get better. Now, why does that matter? Because skills have utility. Now, why does that matter? Because skills let you do something other people can't do. And that thing that it lets you do is solve problems that people want solved. What have I said like 8 times in this episode? That people will pay you in direct proportion to the difficulty of the problems you solve. So going out, learning, getting skills that have utility allows you to do things other people can't do. You're going to be able to get money other people can't get. That is something that wealthy people understand. Maybe it's not fair, but who gives a fuck? Nobody's coming to save you. Nobody's going to solve these problems for you. And if you're turning to people for a handout, all you will ever get is what they're willing to put in your hand. But if, on the other hand, you're willing to go, hey, what's the hardest problem you have to solve? I'm going to make that problem go away for you. And all I ask in return is money. And I'm going to ask the amount of money that's either equal to the exchange for you or less, so that you're tripping over yourself to buy this thing. And that is precisely how you end up breaking the time for money equation. Because wealthy people understand you just can't charge enough for your time in order to make it worth it. So as you can imagine, there are people that offer to pay me a lot of money for one-on-one coaching, but I don't do it. And why don't I do it? Because unless you're willing to give me equity in your company to do it, I just can't charge enough to make it worth the time. So you have to break that time for money equation. You have to be getting ownership in something. And that's another thing that people understand, wealthy people. That real wealth is going to come from owning something. You own something that other people consider extraordinarily valuable, that is going up over time. Now, the reason that ownership matters is because you want to buy low and sell high. The reason that entrepreneurs end up making a lot of money in success, obviously, is because they start with something that's worth nothing. And they get very clever and they build something that over time goes from worth nothing to worth whatever the market values it at. So to give you an example, in my own life, talked about this earlier, we took Quest from a product I couldn't give away, literally. I know that seems ridiculous now, but when we first launched, I would stand at trade shows and tell bodybuilders who ended up becoming like the most ardent purchasers of Quest, and I would say, free protein bar. It's a free Quest bar. I will give it to you right now. We didn't even in the beginning, we didn't even ask for an email. All you had to do was extend your hand, grasp bar. That was the sum total of the payment that we were asking for. And people wouldn't do it. So we had to take it from figuring out the formulation, building out the manufacturing, all the things that we've talked about, convincing people to try it. And we went from that to something that people were willing to pay $1 billion for. But in the beginning, it was worth nothing. And so the amount of money that we had to put in to get profitable, and then we reinvested all that money, and then ultimately we were able to sell it for that extraordinary sum of money. And it was a huge win, life-changing for all of us involved, because we started with nothing and we owned it and we built value in it. That's the key. You have to own something that goes up in value over time. So whether you bought low and you're going to sell high, or whether you were the one that created all the value, and so that you didn't even have to buy anything. You just created value in this thing that later people wanted to own. So ownership is a huge key for people that end up generating wealth. You want to own, you want to hold. And so Warren Buffett talks about this a lot. Selling makes you rich, holding makes you wealthy. Now, what does he mean by that? If you want to sell something, you can get that influx of cash, and you will have whatever that cash is now. But now you're fighting against inflation, right? So you've got the money, but what the hell do you do with it? What are you going to do with it that doesn't allow it to get chipped away by inflation? You're going to have to find somewhere to put that money that's earning you more money than inflation is taking. And so that's why holding really becomes the ultimate play if you're holding the right thing, because it's going up, 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 up over time. And then you can either borrow against that, and this is something that wealthy people understand. You can borrow against your assets. You don't even have to sell them. You use the asset as collateral. You go to a bank, and let's say that your collateral, sorry, it is your collateral, but your asset is what I meant to say. Your asset is going up, let's say 5%, 7% year over year. And inflation is 2%. Or like right now, 8.5% is the current inflation. Hopefully by the time you watch this, that won't be true. And your asset's going up by 10%. So now you're in a situation where even though inflation is chipping away at most people's ability to buy, and whatever you have in savings is going down by that amount of inflation, you've got this asset that's going up more than that cost. Now, if you've got a bank that's willing to give you a loan with that asset as collateral, and the loan is, let's say, 3 or 4%, but you're making 5, 7% off of that money that you're either using to reinvest in your company or buying stocks or whatever you're doing. You have to be very careful buying stocks on debt, which I advise people not to do. But just so you understand how money works. Wealthy people that know how to use debt effectively, that's what they're doing. They don't sell the asset, they borrow against the asset. And as long as there's a delta between the cost of the loan and the amount that the asset goes up, you now never have to sell the asset. You can just keep borrowing against it. This is how real wealth is made, real generational wealth. So yes, you can sell the asset and you can make that money, and you will have to do that over time in order to pay back the loan and all that stuff. But again, there's a delta. So even as you're selling pieces, you're making more than you have to pay back. It's really crazy, and it's freakish how long it took me to understand even basic things like that. So trust me when I say I deeply empathize with people who are hearing that for the first time. So understand that. They understand they have to own something. They have to own something that goes up in value over time, and that they want to own something ideally that they can borrow against. And so that's how selling makes you rich, but owning and holding can make you truly wealthy. All right, those are the habits. If you follow those habits, you really can turn things around in your life. Be hyper careful about using debt. That's like the advanced level stuff, but just by way of making sure you understand how the system works, it can be a very powerful tool in the right hands. The only way that you're going to get rich in 3 years, and we should probably define that, I'll say 7 figures or higher. Seem like a reasonable baseline? Okay, so the only way that you're going to get that kind of wealth is, and I'm assuming that you're not able to invest something, go buy something or something like that. So we're literally starting at scratch. So you're going to have to create a company, create something that generates a lot of value. Typically that's going to be a company. So you're going to create a company that meets a very well-known need that has not yet been serviced by a product that is relatively easy to get across the finish line and into the marketplace. It needs to be something that is going to resonate with social media, and it needs to be something that doesn't cost a lot of money to get started. So either you're gonna layer on way better marketing. So if somebody has a solution to a well-known problem, but they don't know how to market it, you can go and partner and say, hey, look, I understand marketing. I'm gonna be able to get this out there. Or if you have an information product that can be associated with a known problem that you uniquely can solve. I happen to know a little bit about your background. So if there's an element to working in the music industry, to becoming a professional singer, improving your voice or something like that, that you really have a beat on, that you know a lot of people are interested in, that you could turn into a course, for instance, that people would really resonate with, that could be a great one. The reason that I keep coming back to information products is you're looking for something that doesn't cost money up front. If you're gonna like take Quest Nutrition, for instance, when we were building that, there was still a substantive amount of investment that we had to make. Even just buying a bunch of protein powder was expensive. Buying the liquid fiber, you have to buy them in 55-gallon drums. So it's like there were still thousands of dollars that we had to put in the beginning. And so to find something that really takes little to no money down, you're either gonna be doing an information product or you're gonna be doing something that you can make yourself that doesn't have expensive constituent parts, or you're gonna be finding something that's already made that the person doesn't understand marketing. So it's really about what is the bit of value that you're gonna be able to bring to that that's unique, that somebody else can't easily replicate, that the world is gonna know instantly that they need, and you just have to make them aware of it, because 3 years is fast. And so Quest, for instance, depending on what you mean by rich, so for instance, 3 years into Quest, we had $1 billion brand, but I didn't have $1 billion that I could put in my pocket. So I was still driving, I think by then I had finally upgraded my car, but for the first couple years of that, I was still in a beater car, even though I was worth a lot of money. And so if you need the money to be in your pocket, that's probably gonna take a fair amount of time longer. And if I can take a minute to get everybody watching to understand the difference between net worth and income, that would be really valuable. So if you don't mind generating $1 million plus in net worth, now we're back to, you just have to build something that other people say that they want. To have the actual money in your bank account, you have to build worth in something that people say that they want, and then you have to sell that thing. So it's very rare that you're gonna get rich off of the operations of your business. You get rich by building a company where somebody's looking at that. God, this is gonna get complicated fast, so ask follow-up questions. So you're either going to build something that's gonna IPO, okay, initial public offering, and what you're saying is, hey, I built this really cool thing. It makes a lot of money, or people think it's gonna make a lot of money. And by going to the SEC, they'll actually let me fractionate my company, break it into a bunch of pieces known as shares, and then I'm gonna sell some of those shares on the open market, the public markets. And then people can buy those shares. And so that's a way that you're gonna be able to put that money in your pocket, but you're literally selling a piece of the company that you own. Otherwise, you can sell a minority, controlling, or total interest in the company to private equity, venture firms, something like that. But usually when people do that, they're not doing it for founder liquidity. They're doing it because they expect you to invest the money back into growing the company, which is why IPOs get people really excited, because some of the shares you will sell as part of the company treasury, which generates operating capital. Some of the shares will be yours personally that you get for being a founder, and so you can use that as a liquidity event. So now you actually have that money in your pocket. But most people in 3 years, it's gonna be tough. You could get to an IPO stage, but that's gonna be a really rare moment that, again, follows the equation of you're solving a problem that people already know exists in a very dynamic way that people are basically falling over themselves to give you money for, and you've actually created a company that can be sold, which is, we could do a 2-hour class just on what that means. So it's interesting when you ask that question, I really want to give you a hot, sexy take and just be like, oh, go do this. But the reality is to have a 7-figure exit that fast would be hyper rare. It does happen. And I would rather get people thinking about, how do I build a business that's doing $1 million in revenue? All the following things apply, but then it's really about reinvesting every dollar that you're getting back into the company to grow and scale. But again, it's a problem with a killer solution that you're doing in a unique way that didn't require startup capital.
Skills have utility. Skills have utility. There's something in the way that we educate that leads people to believe that skills are this temporary thing that's merely meant to help you pass the test, to get the grade, to get moved on to the next thing. And we've lost an understanding, certainly outside of engineering, that a skill has utility. And what I mean by that is, I believe the very purpose of life, the whole reason that we're all here, is to close your eyes, imagine a world, the world that you want to become reality, open your eyes, go acquire the skills that you will need to actually build that world.
Embark on your hero's journey.
Right. And it's acquiring those skills no longer as a metaphor. You're actually getting skills that allow you to do things. And so people understand skills in that context when they're an engineer, because they know, well, if I know this programming language, then I can actually write code that can be executed in this way. An architect, if I learn engineering principles, I can build buildings that aren't going to fall down, right? They understand that. But like, once you get into the humanities, people no longer think about, oh, skills have utility. Like, they actually do something. Like, if I'm a teacher, I should really probably learn about the developmental cycle of children. Why? Because I need to control them. If I can get them quiet, paying attention, in an optimal state for information, then I can make them better students. That's the utility. Because of the things that I'm learning about how to get them to be quiet and where I want them and all that, I can get them in their seats, I can get them paying attention, prime them. Like, maybe what I have to learn about is the correlation between exercise and cognitive optimization, like whatever it is. But like, learning those skills, if you get really good at that, means your students will walk out of your classroom better prepared, better grades, more knowledge, go on to do better, right? Like they found in the Stanford marshmallow test, the single most correlated factor of success is the ability to delay gratification. Well, now imagine you're a teacher and you learn to teach kids how to delay gratification. That may be the single most important thing those kids will ever learn. And because you learned that skill, now that skill has massive utility. But people don't approach the world that way. They're always looking for what's the broken system. And I'm saying, forget about that. Figure out how to fix a system. That's fine. But don't waste your energy trying to figure out what's broken in the system until you know how to fix a system. But most people don't. They want to learn how to squawk. They want to go, I know it's broken. Anybody can give you that really cool speech about how the current education system was designed to create factory workers. Okay, we all know it. But is anybody fixing the system? No. And it's not going to get fixed until somebody goes, I have to learn the very nature of fixing systems. That's the skill I have to acquire, and I know what its utility is, and then the expected outcome in the real world. So when I hear people where their reaction is to bitch about a problem, like you and I were talking, you being Hispanic is working against you. Jason, you being an African American, it's working against you. Like, you're going to have to go uphill. But now what? You're going to sit and complain about it? Because it won't help you, right? So if you have a goal, it's like, it does suck that women have to work harder to get to the same place that as a white male in America that I have to get to. But if it is true, if we're all going to accept that it's true, we can all sit there and go, we need to focus on the systems. Fair enough, and I'm glad that some people do that. The other option, though, is to say, well, I completely control me. And the one thing I will tell any human being alive right now, there is always room for the best. And once you're able, through your skills that have utility, to move somebody else closer to their goal, you will become a hot commodity, no matter what. No matter what. Okay? Think about the scientists. What were the scientists after World War II? Right before they were scientists for us, they were Nazis. But we were way happy to let go of that because they had crazy skills that we needed, right? So really what it comes down to is, what are your skills? Like, if you've got skills that can be used to build something beautiful, to do something wonderful to the world, to help people move towards their goals, that will excite the masses because they want that thing that you're going to create, that it's going to improve people's lives. But only thing that mattered in all of that was you got really good at something. And somewhere along the way, we lost that the punchline is, no matter what you do to the system, you as an individual need to get extraordinary at something. And so my encouragement to people is, go get extraordinary. Like, don't worry about whether the system is broken or not. We built Quest, $1 billion company, in less than 5 years coming out of the Great Recession. So, what was it? In the Great Depression, more millionaires were created in the Great Depression than any other time in history. It's like, it just comes down to somebody goes, honestly, this is how I react. The system is too big and complicated. I'm too afraid to try to get caught up in fixing that. I'm too big of a chicken. There, I just said it. I'm too big of a chicken to deal with that. But I can deal with myself. I can go get extraordinary, right? So focus on that. Go get extraordinary. Go become the best of whatever it is you want to be. But go become the best of it and see how the world opens to you.
If you want to be successful, mindset is everything. The reason that mindset is so important is, at the end of the day, only execution matters. So if you have big dreams, if you have goals, something that you're trying to accomplish in your life, you're going to have to execute against that. So why do I say that mindset is so important in that scenario? The reason is that ultimately, to achieve the things you want to achieve, I can promise you when you start out, you're not good enough yet to achieve that, and or you don't have the right plan. And so the way to refine the plan to actually do the thing that you want to accomplish, you're going to have to run through what I call the physics of progress. The physics of progress are very simple. They require you to have a hypothesis, which is simply your best guess. This is what I think I have to do to achieve my goals. Then you're going to turn that into something you can do. You're going to do that thing. It's going to fail to some degree. That's just the way it works. But failure is the most information-rich data stream on planet Earth. But to accurately assess the data and figure out what it's telling you about why you failed to some extent, or why it was more inefficient than it needs to be, you have to be willing to stare nakedly at your own inadequacies, take responsibility for the outcome, not make it somebody else's fault or the economy's fault or whatever, any external force. If you're making it an external problem, you're never going to be able to learn the lesson you need to learn in order to improve your behavior so that you can then execute better and make more progress. That really is it. That's the physics of progress. Hypothesis. Turn it into something actionable. Run that action. Learn from the partial failure, get a little bit smarter, come up with a new hypothesis that is more informed, turn it into something actionable, run that, it will fail again to some degree, figure out why by lowering your defenses, having a growth mindset, making sure that you are able to take on the responsibility. Now, why is that a mindset question? Why can't you just run that equation if it really is that simple? The answer is, you have in your brain something called the psychological immune system. This is something given to you by millions of years of evolution. We should all be extremely grateful for it. And the psychological immune system's job is to make sure that you don't commit suicide. It is designed to make you feel better about things. It's the reason why you can mess up, make a mistake, and you can soothe yourself. Now, the problem is that the goal of the psychological immune system is not for you to achieve your goals. It's simply to make sure that you feel good enough about yourself that you can keep moving through life. Now, the reason that that becomes wildly problematic and is one of the most important things that you have to address in your mindset if you're going to be successful is because the number one tool that your psychological immune system works to soothe your ego is to make everything somebody else's fault. It is the fault of the government. It is the fault of rich people. It is the fault of not being born the right color, not being born the right sex, so on and so forth. It is making something the external problem. Now, here's the really bad news. Your psychological immune system is going to grab for a very valid excuse. Those things that I listed may all be true. They may really all be holding you back. The problem is you want to know what the right mindset for success is. And if you want to be successful, you are going to have to overcome an endless parade of problems. And to overcome the endless parade of problems, you have to have a way to take responsibility for what you can do differently to overcome those problems. Instead of being annoyed, instead of shutting down, instead of just pointing the finger, you want to adapt your behavior. It sucks that the second law of thermodynamics is that all things move towards chaos. It sucks that humans are so complicated and so weird that we don't just lift each other and love each other, which we do and is amazing. We tear each other down, we kill each other. Man, read history books. It will terrify you about how brutal humans can be. It is crazy how many different times and places throughout history we have just slaughtered people in mass numbers in the most horrifying way that you can possibly imagine. So if humans can slide all the way to that level of depraved madness, and we know that everything moves towards chaos, how do we bring the massive amount of order that we have to bring to the world so that we can march everlong towards success and actually achieve it? The only way to overcome chaos, the only way to overcome entropy, which is the fancy name for chaos, is to pour energy into the system. So you have to constantly pour energy into your own life to make sure that you're making progress to your goals if you're going to eventually achieve success. And the only way that you're going to be able to do that is to have a growth mindset. Now, really simply, a growth mindset is that you believe that your talent and intelligence are not fixed traits, that you can get better at something as you put time and energy into getting better at that thing. It's what I call the only belief that matters. The only belief that matters is that by applying time and energy into something, you will actually get better at it. Now, once you believe that, everything in your life downstream of that gets better because now you know, oh, I messed up at this thing. I suck at that thing. The world is trying to stop me from doing that thing. The world is effective at stopping me from doing that thing. Oh, word? All I need to do is go and get better and I can outperform people. As Kobe Bryant said, and this has become my favorite quote in the world, boos don't block dunks. Now, what did he mean by that? He meant that no matter what, you can get so good that people can't stop you. People were paid millions of dollars to stop Kobe Bryant from scoring points, and yet he scored 81 points in a single game just by getting better than other people. Getting better than other people requires you to have a growth mindset. That's the growth part. You're going to get better so that when you fail, and you will fail over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, and it's going to be embarrassing and it's going to hurt and all that, but when you fail, if you believe, oh, failing means that I'm a failure because my talent and intelligence are fixed traits, there's nothing I can do to get better, you will stop. Why wouldn't you? It's the only thing that makes sense. But if, on the other hand, you believe that, oh, I can get better at this. I'm not good enough yet, but I can get good enough by applying time and energy into getting better. So now you'll apply that time and energy because you believe that it will yield the outcome that you want. And that is why it is so critical to get your mind right so that you can run that loop of the physics of progress. Because watch how it breaks down if you don't have a growth mindset. I have a hypothesis. Hey, this is what I need to do. I'm going to try this thing. I tried it. Oh my God, I failed. It's embarrassing. I'm hurt. Emotionally, people are making fun of me. My parents are telling me, I told you so. Oh my God, I don't want to keep going. And by the way, this is making me really feel badly about myself. So now I'm going to stew over it. I'm going to think about this all the time. Why did I fail, man? I'm cool. I didn't do anything wrong. Oh, I failed because the world sucks. The world's against me. All the reasons that people make up, not even make up, all the very valid reasons that you were stopped. If you have a fixed mindset, you're going to tell yourself that. You're going to take those excuses because they make you feel better about yourself. And in that moment of emotional crisis that happens every time we fail, you're going to reach for whatever makes you feel better. If, on the other hand, you have a growth mindset, when you hit that moment, you're going to be like, okay, cool, I need to get better at this. I'm going to have to transform my potential into usable skill set and then execute against that. Then you can reformulate your hypothesis, come up with a better action to do, run that, and even though it will fail again to some extent, you'll have made more progress. And when you iterate on that loop enough, just relentlessly getting better, trying new things, making incremental improvement, then you win. And that is the only path to success.
Most people who would come into obscene wealth like this, would think about buying an island or, going off and living some crazy life of luxury or traveling the world for the next 5 or 10 years, essentially doing nothing. And you decide to invest in this new endeavor seemingly immediately. Like, why did you make that decision?
Well, that was thankfully a reaction to, I went through the pain of living the cliche of money can't buy happiness early. So that was the very thing that gave birth to my true financial success. Was
so
me
walk
saying,
me through that, though. Because most people will never experience what it's like to come into crazy wealth.
Yeah, it is a really funny moment, and funny is the right word. It's fun, but it's also funny in that when I was growing up, part of the reason I wanted to get rich was I looked at those people with admiration, and I did not look at myself with admiration. Mm-hmm. So I thought, oh, well, if I can get wealthy, then I will look at myself with admiration. This will be amazing. And then when I got the money, by then I had changed myself fundamentally as a person, and I had earned so much self-respect and so much self-worth that by the time I got the money, I wasn't looking for anything from the money other than it is the great facilitator. It will let you do extraordinary things, but it won't make you an extraordinary person. It won't make you feel any differently about yourself. And because the money came literally like that, because we had paper wealth, so I was worth hundreds of millions of dollars on paper. But I just cannot stress enough, that's meaningless in your real life. I was driving, at one point a beat up Ford Focus. My wife and I had to share it, had a leaky exhaust. And yet at that point, I was worth tens of millions of dollars. But there were employees that were living far better lives than I was from a financial standpoint. So that's paper money. Now, bank account money came in an instant. And so it was about, 6 years into our journey. And we decided to take a small investment to diversify. So it was a pure founder liquidity moment. And because the valuation of the company was over $1 billion, you can imagine even at a small percentage, just the raw number of dollars is insanity. So all of a sudden I was fantastically wealthy. But I was like, it is so, in fact, this was how that day went. So everyone I said earlier, beliefs, values, identity, habits, routines, right? These are the things that make people up. And I just have a value system that says it's not about the money. It's about building something you believe in. It's about serving other people. It's about work ethic. It's about showing up and working. And I value myself for that. So on the day that the money hit, it hit at 8 a.m. in the morning or something. And my wife, we're both in the gym. And she's like, what are we going to do today? And I was like, what do you mean? I'm going to work. And she couldn't wrap her head around that. She's like, whoa.
You're not going to go to the Lamborghini dealer?
Yeah, she's like, come on, we've got to go do something. We've got to celebrate. And I'm like, there's no universe in which I don't show up for work today. None, under no circumstances. So if you were to ask my employees, when did the money hit? They'd all be like, I have no idea. They knew that it did hit, but they didn't know what day because I acted completely the same. And the thing that I want people to understand is I feel the same. So all of the things that I believe about myself to be good, I still believe to be good. I earned them. I earned them by doing the hard thing time and time and time and time again. I know how much I'm willing to serve people and my family and myself and all. I just know I've done it for years and years and years. So when it came to, do I buy an island and retire or do I double down? It came down to what will make me love my life the most. And the reality is the thing that would make me love my life the most, because it would still be fun to just go home and be with my wife. But the thing that will make me love my life the most is to do the things that are fulfilling. And I think fulfillment has a very specific, universal formula. And that formula is work your ass off to get very good at something that you care deeply about that allows you to serve not only yourself, but other people. That's it. You got to have all of it.
Technique.
Literally.
Yes.
Rich, it is literally technique.
Yeah.
And people, they don't
explain
think
what that
about
is for people that don't know.
So it's this ancient Greek notion of fulfillment, basically. And the fact that it's coming from that word, technique, to get good at something and something that's hard. So the way that I explain it to people is people think of doing something like going and ladling soup at a soup kitchen, which may be the right place to start. But ultimately, you're going to realize anyone can do this. And so I haven't earned something special that allows me to serve myself and humanity. So part of it is working your ass off to get a set of skills that have real value. And my whole thing, this may be the biggest problem we face as a society. People don't remember that skills have utility. They let you do something. You don't learn to build a house to impress your parents. You learn to build a house so people can live in the house you build. And once people understand that, like, holy shit, you're building this house so somebody can live in it, build a home in it, have a family, be sheltered from storms, like, fuck, it's a real thing, man. And so all of that effort and energy you went into, I have the chills right now, is so you can create that moment for yourself, for other people. It is something so much more than going to architecture school, which maybe you went to because your parents wanted that and they were architects. And so you do that thing for that and you forget that the whole reason you became an architect was to build houses. And so once people realize, oh, I'm putting all of this time and energy to build these things because they let me do something. What do I want to do? What do I want to give? What do I want to create? When you look at skills from that perspective, it is being a superhero. It is being a superhero. You're going to collect these abilities. These abilities actually let you do something. The fact that Superman can fly allows him to save people, allows him to do things other people can't do. We all have this opportunity to become capable of the extraordinary, to be able to do things other people can't do. And that feels so good.